A single gunshot echoes across the frozen Wyoming wilderness, shattering the silence like brittle glass. In these mountains, secrets have a way of getting buried beneath snow, beneath lies, beneath the weight of a past that refuses to stay dead. They say the coldest places on Earth aren't found on any map. They exist in the spaces between truth and power, in the frozen wasteland where good men retreat when systems fail them, where whistleblowers go to disappear. But some betrayals run too deep to forget. Some wrongs can't be buried, no matter how remote the hiding place. And sometimes redemption arrives in the most unexpected forms, a desperate knock on a cabin door during the worst blizzard in decades. In a world where the powerful crush the honest, where corporate empires are built on stolen futures, one thing remains certain: the most dangerous person isn't the one with nothing to lose, but the one who's already lost everything and found something worth fighting for again. The wind howled through the Wyoming mountains like a wounded animal, carrying ice and broken promises on its breath. Raymond Ray Harmon stood on the porch of his weathered cabin, watching the storm intensify through eyes that had seen too much of the world's darker corners. At 70, his broad shoulders still carried the weight of his 6-foot frame with stubborn dignity, though decades of working with engines and metal had left his hands gnarled like the roots of an ancient tree. Twilight was surrendering tonight, and the temperature had plummeted to single digits. Ray pulled his worn flannel jacket tighter, breath crystallizing in the frigid air. The radio had warned of the season's worst blizzard, and Ray had prepared accordingly: generator checked, woodpile stocked, pantry filled with enough canned goods to last weeks. Out here, 20 miles from the nearest town of Clearwater, preparation wasn't just prudent, it was survival. He gave one final glance at the darkening sky before turning back inside, bolting the door against the mounting fury. The cabin was modest but functional: a main room with a stone fireplace, small kitchen, bedroom, and bathroom. The adjoining workshop, separated by a connecting door, was where Ray spent most of his days, resurrecting vehicles others had deemed beyond saving. Just like old times, eh? Cosmo. Ray addressed the aging German shepherd curled on a rug near the crackling fire. The dog lifted his graying muzzle, offering a lazy thump of his tail in response. Ray poured himself 2 fingers of bourbon, savoring the amber liquid as he sank into his armchair. The whiskey burned pleasantly, warming him from within as memories flickered like the flames in the hearth. 25 years had passed since the Artemis disaster, yet the images remained razor-sharp in his mind: the urgent meetings, the ignored warnings, the explosion that claimed 7 lives. 7 souls he couldn't save because no one would listen to a mid-level engineer questioning the wisdom of his superiors. The subsequent investigation had been a masterclass in corporate damage control. NASA needed a scapegoat, and Ray's refusal to sacrifice his team made him the perfect candidate. They buried his concerns under mountains of technical jargon and false testimony. By the time they finished, Ray Harmon, once considered among the most promising minds in aerospace engineering, was portrayed as an unstable, paranoid liability. The settlement had come with strings attached to his silence in exchange for avoiding criminal negligence charges. The money had bought this land and his freedom, but neither could purchase redemption or peace. A sudden, violent gust rattled the windows, pulling Ray from his reverie. Cosmo's ears perked up, his attention fixed on the door. A moment later, Ray heard it: 3 sharp knocks, barely audible above the storm's rage. Ray tensed, hand instinctively reaching for the shotgun propped against the wall. Visitors were rare even in fair weather. In a blizzard like this, they were unheard of. The knocking came again, more insistent. Ray approached cautiously, shotgun in hand, and peered through the small window adjacent to the door. A figure stood huddled on his porch, slender, wrapped in a snow-covered coat, dark hair partially visible beneath a hood. "Who's there?" Ray called out, voice gruff from bourbon and solitude. "Please," came a woman's voice, trembling with cold or fear or both. "My car broke down 2 miles back. I've been walking. I just need to use a phone." Ray hesitated. 20 years of isolation had made him wary of strangers, yet something in her voice, a raw desperation, stirred something long dormant within him. "Step back from the door," he instructed, waiting until she complied before cautiously unbolting it. The woman stumbled in as a blast of bitter air invaded the cabin. She was younger than Ray had expected, perhaps mid-40s, with intelligent brown eyes that surveyed the room with a strange mixture of relief and continued vigilance. Despite her disheveled appearance, there was an unmistakable professional quality to her bearing. "Thank you," she breathed, lowering her hood to reveal a face that might have been beautiful, if not strained by exhaustion. "I wasn't sure I'd make it another mile." "Most folks wouldn't in weather like this," Ray replied, keeping the shotgun visible but lowered. "Name's Ray Harmon." "Elizabeth Cornell," she replied, rubbing her gloved hands together. "Liz." Ray gestured toward the fire. "Warm yourself, then you can make your call." She nodded gratefully, moving toward the hearth where Cosmo watched her with cautious interest. As she held her hands to the flames, Ray noted the fine quality of her boots and coat, expensive brands not typically found on hikers or local residents. "Phone's in the kitchen," Ray said. "Landline. Cell service doesn't reach here, especially not in weather like this." Liz glanced toward the kitchen, then back to Ray. "Is it a secure line?" The question raised immediate red flags. "Secure as any rural line gets," he answered carefully. "Who exactly are you trying to call at the height of a blizzard that requires security?" A silent calculation played across her features before she spoke. "Someone who can help me, and possibly a lot of other people too." She reached into her pocket and extracted a small device that resembled a thumb drive. "This contains evidence of financial crimes that affect thousands of people, many of them elderly veterans. I need to get it to someone who can act on it." Ray's expression remained impassive, though his grip on the shotgun tightened slightly. "Lady, I don't know what kind of trouble you're in, but the kind that gets people killed," she interrupted, her voice dropping to barely above a whisper. "I worked for Pinnacle Group." The name triggered instant recognition. Pinnacle was a financial behemoth with tentacles in everything from banking to defense contracting. Even in Ray's self-imposed exile, he'd heard the name. "I was a senior financial analyst," she continued. "6 months ago, I noticed irregularities in our investment structures, retirement accounts being siphoned into offshore holdings, pension funds for veterans being leveraged in ways that violated every regulation in existence." Her eyes locked with Ray's. "When I brought it to my superiors, they didn't just ignore me, they came after me, fired me, froze my accounts, started spreading rumors that I was mentally unstable." Ray's jaw tightened. The story hit uncomfortably close to home. "And that drive contains proof," she nodded. "Transaction records, account numbers, timestamps, everything needed to prove systematic fraud. I need to call Senator James Whitaker in Washington. He's an old college friend, and he can connect me with the right people at the FBI." Ray studied her face, looking for signs of deception. Finding none, he sighed heavily. "Kitchen's through there. Make your call." Liz moved toward the phone, shoulders dropping slightly in relief. Ray watched as she dialed, fingers trembling slightly. After a moment, her posture straightened. "Yes, this is Elizabeth Cornell. I need to speak with Senator Whitaker." A pause. "I understand he's in a meeting, but this is urgent. Tell him it's about Pinnacle Group and Operation Blackwater." Another pause. "Yes, I'll hold." Ray moved to the window, scanning the darkness beyond. The storm had intensified, snow swirling in hypnotic patterns illuminated by the cabin's exterior lights. Something about the situation felt wrong, a nagging instinct honed by years of engineering, critical systems, where the smallest oversight could mean disaster. "Daniel, thank God." Liz's voice changed, relief flooding her tone. "I need to speak with the senator immediately." "No, I can't explain everything now." "Yes, I have it all." "What?" Her expression shifted suddenly to confusion, then alarm. "Daniel, who's there with you, Daniel?" She slammed the phone down, face drained of color. "We need to leave. Now." "What happened?" Ray demanded. "That wasn't right," she said, moving quickly away from the phone. Daniel's voice was off. He kept pressing for my location, which he'd never do. Someone was with him, someone who's compromised the senator's office. As if to punctuate her words, Cosmo rose to his feet, a low growl rumbling in his throat as he faced the window. Ray followed the dog's gaze and felt his blood run cold. In the distance, barely visible through the swirling snow, a faint light pulsed in the sky, growing larger by the second. "Helicopter," Ray muttered. "In this weather." "They've traced the call," Liz whispered. "We have less than 10 minutes. Ray's mind raced through options. Calculations, probabilities, the same analytical process that had once made him valuable to NASA. "Pack room, now," he ordered, already moving. "Grab the emergency kit, black duffel under the bed. I'll get the guns." They moved with urgent efficiency. Ray collected his shotgun, hunting rifle, and revolver, along with ammunition. From a hidden compartment in his workshop floor, he retrieved a weather-sealed case containing cash, a passport, and various documents contingencies from a life that had taught him to prepare for the worst. When Liz emerged from the bedroom with the duffel, Ray was already pulling on heavy winter gear. "There's extra clothing in there," he nodded toward the bag. "Layer up. Where we're going. The cold kills faster than bullets." "Where exactly is that?" she asked, already pulling a thermal layer over her sweater. "I've got a place. Off-grid. But we need to move fast." He checked his watch. "That chopper's maybe 5 minutes out." Liz hesitated. "Why are you helping me?" "You don't know me." Ray paused, the question catching him off guard. After a moment, he answered simply, "Because 25 years ago, nobody helped me." Before she could respond, a new sound cut through the howling wind, the rhythmic thrum of helicopter blades. Much closer now. Cosmo's growl deepened. "Out the back," Ray instructed, grabbing a final bag of supplies. "Stay in my tracks. One misstep in snow this deep could be your last." They slipped out through the workshop's rear exit, instantly assaulted by wind that stole breath and numbed exposed skin within seconds. The snow reached mid-thigh, each step a battle against the elements. Ray led them toward a small outbuilding 50 yards from the main cabin. Behind them, the helicopter's searchlight swept across the property, momentarily illuminating their tracks in the snow. Ray cursed under his breath as the beam settled on the cabin. They reached the outbuilding, a weathered structure that housed Ray's snowmobile and various tools. "Get in," Ray ordered, sliding open the door. Inside, covered by a tarp, sat an older model snowmobile. "It's not pretty, but it'll get us through terrain they can't follow with vehicles." As Ray prepped the machine, Liz peered through a small window. "They're landing," she reported, voice tight. 4 men. No, 6. Military formation. Armed." Ray nodded grimly. "Maxwell Reed's men." "You know about Reed?" Liz asked, surprised. "Read about him. Ex-CIA turned corporate security. Man's reputation makes Navy SEALs look like crossing guards." Ray pulled the tarp away. "Time to go." The snowmobile sputtered to life on the third try. Ray secured their bags while Liz climbed on behind him. "Hold tight," he instructed, "and keep your head down." They burst from the outbuilding as shouts echoed from the direction of the cabin. The snowmobile's engine roared as Ray gunned it toward the tree line 200 yards away. Behind them, the helicopter's spotlight swept wildly. Searching. "They've seen us!" Liz shouted over the engine's roar. A crack split the air rifle fire. Snow erupted in plumes to their left. Ray swerved, pushing the machine harder as they zigzagged toward the safety of the forest. Another shot, closer this time. Liz tightened her grip around Ray's waist as the snowmobile bounced over hidden obstacles. Just as they reached the first line of pines, a bullet found its mark in the snowmobile's rear panel. Ray felt the impact but kept going, weaving between trees with the practiced precision of someone who knew these woods intimately. The forest closed around them, swallowing them into darkness, broken only by the snowmobile's headlight. For 20 minutes, Ray navigated the treacherous terrain up steep inclines, through narrow passes, across a frozen creek bed. The helicopter's sound faded, unable to follow through the dense canopy, but Ray knew that wouldn't stop Reed's men for long. They would have snowmobiles of their own, tracking devices, thermal imaging. At last, they reached a rock formation that jutted from the mountainside like ancient, broken teeth. Ray slowed the snowmobile, guiding it into a narrow crevice barely visible in the gloom. The passage twisted for 50 feet before opening into a small clearing sheltered by overhanging rock. "End of the line for the machine," Ray said, cutting the engine. "From here, we go on foot." Liz dismounted stiffly, surveying their surroundings with uncertainty. "Where exactly are we going?" Ray pointed to what appeared to be a solid rock face. "There." As they approached, what had seemed impenetrable revealed itself to be an optical illusion created by the rock's natural formation. A narrow fissure, just wide enough for a person to slip through sideways, cut into the mountainside. Ray produced a flashlight and led the way. The passage extended 30 feet before widening into a cavern, roughly the size of Ray's living room. The beam from Ray's flashlight revealed a space that, while Spartan, contained the essentials for survival cots: canned food, water, first aid supplies, even a small propane heater. "Welcome to the bunker," Ray said, lighting the heater. "Used to be an old mining exploratory shaft. Found it years ago while tracking a wounded elk. Turned it into my insurance policy." Liz looked around in amazement. "You've been preparing for something like this." "Not this exactly," Ray admitted, arranging their gear. "But when you've seen the system destroy someone once, you don't take chances." He opened a metal container, revealing more ammunition, some basic tools, and a hand-crank radio. "We'll rest here tonight. At first light, we'll head to Clearwater. I know someone who might help us." As the small heater began to warm the space, Liz removed her outer layers. Ray noticed her wincing as she rolled her shoulder. "Injured?" he asked. She nodded. "Before I found your place, slipped on ice, landed hard." Ray retrieved a first aid kit. "Let me see." Reluctantly, she pulled her sweater aside to reveal an angry bruise spreading across her collarbone and shoulder. Ray examined it with clinical detachment. "Not broken, but badly bruised. You're lucky." "Doesn't feel lucky," she muttered. As Ray applied a salve and bandage, a heavy silence settled between them. Finally, Liz spoke. "You said nobody helped you 25 years ago. What happened?" Ray's hands stilled momentarily. Few people ever asked about his past, and fewer still received answers. Yet something about their shared predicament, both victims of powerful interests that valued profit over truth, loosened his usual reticence. "I was an engineer at NASA," he began, resuming his work on her shoulder. "Specialized in life support systems for the Artemis program. Found a critical flaw in the oxygen circulation design, a flaw my superiors refused to acknowledge because fixing it would delay the launch and cost millions." His voice grew distant. "7 astronauts died when the system failed exactly as I predicted." Liz's eyes widened in recognition. "The Artemis disaster? I remember the news coverage. What you don't remember is how they buried the truth," Ray continued, voice hardening. "Classified my warnings, doctored test results, paid off witnesses. When I refused to blame my team for procedural errors, they painted me as the unstable one. Sound familiar?" Liz nodded slowly. "All too familiar. They offered me a settlement. Take the money, sign the papers, disappear." Ray packed away the first aid supplies. "I took it, thought about fighting, but against NASA, defense contractors, and half the government. What chance did I have? So you came here," Liz concluded. So I came here, Ray nodded. Built a life fixing things I actually could fix. He met her gaze. But you're doing what I didn't. Fighting back. That takes courage. Liz looked down at her hands. Or foolishness. Look where it's gotten us. Alive, Ray countered. And as long as we're alive, Reed hasn't won. They fell silent again. The only sound the gentle hiss of the heater and the distant howl of wind through the mountain passages. Eventually, exhaustion claimed Liz, her breathing deepening as she curled on one of the cots. Ray remained awake, mind racing through contingencies and escape routes. Maxwell Reed's reputation wasn't exaggerated. The man had turned Pinnacle's security division into something more resembling a private military company. If half the rumors were true, Reed had connections throughout law enforcement, intelligence agencies, even politics. Getting Liz and her evidence to safety wouldn't just be difficult, it would be nearly impossible. Yet as Ray watched her sleep, he felt something long dormant stirring within him, a sense of purpose, of righteous anger at systems that crushed individuals who dared speak truth to power. 25 years ago, he had walked away. This time would be different. Dawn broke with deceptive tranquility, the storm having passed during the night. Ray woke Liz at first light, allowing her just enough time to eat a protein bar and drink some water before they began breaking camp. We'll head east through Blackwater Pass, Ray explained, marking their route on a topographical map. It's steep, but Reed's men will expect us to take the easier southern route toward the highway. How far to Clearwater? Liz asked, rewrapping her injured shoulder. 15 miles as the crow flies. More like 20 the way we'll go. With the snow this deep, it'll take most of the day. Ray packed the last of their gear. The person we're meeting, Mike Callahan, he's the county sheriff and an old friend. If anyone can arrange secure transport to Denver, it's him. They emerged from the cave into a world transformed. The forest glistened under a fresh blanket of snow, branches laden with white, the air crystalline and sharp. In different circumstances, the scene might have been peaceful, even beautiful. Now, it represented an exposed battlefield where their tracks would be visible to any pursuers. We'll keep to the tree cover where possible, Ray instructed, and use natural features to mask our trail when we can't. They set off, trudging through snow that sometimes reached their knees. Ray set a grueling pace, aware that each minute counted. Occasionally, he would stop, listening intently before adjusting their course slightly. Twice they doubled back, crossing their own trail to confuse any trackers. By mid-morning, they had covered nearly 5 miles, ascending steadily toward Blackwater Pass. The exertion and elevation had Liz breathing hard, her injured shoulder clearly causing pain with each step. Still, she pressed on without complaint, a determination in her eyes that Ray found himself respecting more with each passing hour. As they paused for water near a fallen pine, Liz asked the question that had clearly been weighing on her mind. What happens if we don't make it to your friend, if Reed's men catch up to us? Ray considered his answer carefully. I don't intend to be taken alive, he said finally. Reed's type, they don't leave witnesses. They make examples. Liz nodded, her expression somber. The evidence on this drive, it's not just about money. Pinnacle's fraud scheme involves laundering funds for some very dangerous people. Politicians, foreign interests, maybe worse. All the more reason to keep moving, Ray replied, shouldering his pack. They had just crested a steep ridge when Ray froze, raising his hand in a silent command to stop. Ahead, perhaps half a mile away, a thin column of smoke rose from the trees. Someone's camped in the pass, Ray murmured, pulling out a compact pair of binoculars. He scanned the area carefully, focusing on the smoke's source. Can't make out much. Could be hikers, hunters, or Reed's men setting up an ambush. Can we go around? Liz asked. Ray studied the terrain. Not easily. The pass narrows through there. Going around means scaling terrain that's treacherous even in good weather. He lowered the binoculars. We need a closer look. They approached cautiously, using the trees for cover. As they drew nearer, the distinct odor of burning rubber and fuel joined the wood smoke, not the scent of a campfire. Through a break in the trees, they finally saw the source of snowmobile, or what remained of one, partially buried in a snowdrift and smoldering. Nearby, a figure in heavy winter gear was attempting to dig the machine out, cursing colorfully with each futile shovelful. Ray signaled Liz to stay put while he circled to approach from a different angle. Shotgun at the ready, he moved with surprising stealth for a man his age, decades of hunting having taught him how to place each foot silently. When he was within 20 yards, Ray called out, "That's far enough. Hands where I can see them." The figure startled, spinning around with hands raised. "Don't shoot!" a young male voice shouted. "I'm unarmed. Turn around, slowly," Ray commanded. The man complied, revealing a face in its early 30s, beard stubbled and bruised along one cheekbone. His expensive snowmobile suit was torn at the shoulder, revealing what looked like a fresh wound. "Who are you?" Ray demanded, keeping the shotgun aimed. "Sam Reeves," the man replied, voice shaking slightly from cold or fear. "My snowmobile hit a hidden rock or something. Been stuck here since last night." Ray's eyes narrowed skeptically. "Pretty far from any marked trails." "I know," Sam admitted. "I was tracking a buck when the storm hit. Got turned around." His gaze flicked past Ray. "Is there someone with you? I could really use some help. I think my shoulder's dislocated." Before Ray could respond, a distant mechanical whine reached them, the distinctive sound of snowmobiles. Multiple engines, approaching fast. "Get down!" Ray hissed, dropping to a crouch. Liz emerged from her hiding spot, rushing to join them behind the cover of the damaged snowmobile. "Reed's men," she whispered. "Likely," Ray confirmed. "At least 3 machines from the sound." Sam looked between them, confusion evident. "Who's Reed? What's happening?" "Shut up," Ray growled. "Those people coming, they're not the friendly type." The engines grew louder, then suddenly cut off. Voices carried through the crisp air, professional, clipped, using what sounded like tactical commands. Ray peered carefully over the snowmobile. 3 men in white winter camouflage were spreading out in a search pattern, each carrying what appeared to be military-grade rifles. "We need to move," Ray whispered. "They'll find this wreck any minute." "My shoulder," Sam protested weakly. Ray made a split-second decision. "Liz, help him. Follow me. Stay low." They retreated into the trees as silently as possible, Sam biting back groans of pain with each step. They had barely made it 50 yards when a shout indicated the search team had found the wrecked snowmobile. "Run!" Ray ordered, abandoning stealth for speed. They crashed through the underbrush, snow falling from disturbed branches as they fled. Behind them came the sound of pursuit, booted feet pounding through snow, branches snapping. "There!" one of the pursuers shouted. A rifle crack split the air, bark exploding from a tree inches from Liz's head. Ray whirled, bringing his shotgun up in one fluid motion. He fired twice, not aiming to kill, but to slow the pellets spraying the area where their pursuers took cover. Screams confirmed at least one hit. "This way," Ray urged, leading them toward a steep embankment. They half ran, half slid down the icy slope, Sam's pained gasp punctuating each jarring step. At the bottom, a frozen stream stretched before them, its ice likely thin after the recent warm spell before the storm. Ray hesitated only briefly before stepping onto it. "Spread out," he instructed. "Distribute your weight. Move quickly, but don't run." They were halfway across when the ice groaned ominously beneath them. Behind, their pursuers appeared at the top of the embankment, taking aim. "Down!" Ray shouted as bullets pinged across the ice. They dropped flat, spreading their weight further, but the sudden movement proved too much. With a sickening crack, the ice gave way beneath Liz, plunging her into the frigid water. Her scream cut off as the cold shocked her system. Ray lunged, catching her wrist before the current could drag her under the intact ice. The water's bitter cold burned like fire, instantly numbing his hand. "Help me!" he shouted to Sam, who scrambled forward despite his injured shoulder. Together, they hauled Liz from the water, her skin already taking on a bluish tinge, teeth chattering uncontrollably. More gunfire forced them to keep moving, half dragging Liz toward the far bank. "She'll die of hypothermia in minutes," Sam gasped as they reached the trees. "Not if I can help it," Ray grunted. He scanned their surroundings, making a quick calculation. "There's an old hunting cabin about half a mile east. Used to belong to a friend before the Forest Service claimed the land." They moved as quickly as Liz's condition allowed, Ray supporting most of her weight as she stumbled alongside him. Sam kept watch behind them, using Ray's handgun to fire occasional covering shots when their pursuers appeared. The cabin materialized like a mirage, a small, dilapidated structure nearly hidden by pines. Its windows were boarded, the door secured with a rusted padlock that Ray shot off without hesitation. Inside was cold and musty but dry. Ray immediately began gathering materials for a fire, while Sam helped Liz out of her wet clothes. "Wrap her in these," Ray instructed, tossing Sam dry blankets from a storage chest. "Then get her close to the fireplace." As the kindling caught, Ray retrieved his satellite phone, a luxury he rarely used but maintained for emergencies. He punched in a number from memory. "Mike, it's Ray Harmon. I'm calling in that favor you owe me." He listened briefly. "I'm at Bill Tucker's old hunting cabin with 2 others. We've got people after us, professionals. Armed. Dangerous." Another pause. "Good. We'll be waiting. And Mike, come alone." He ended the call, turning to find Sam watching him intently while Liz shivered beneath blankets near the growing fire. "Help's on the way," Ray announced. "Sheriff Callahan will be here within 2 hours. Until then, we fortify this position." As they worked to secure the cabin, boarding broken windows, overturning furniture for cover, setting up defensive positions, Ray kept a careful eye on Sam. Something about the young man's story didn't sit right, but he couldn't afford to alienate a potential ally with Reed's men still hunting them. Liz gradually recovered enough to speak, though her voice remained weak. "You think they'll find us here?" "Eventually," Ray answered honestly. "But we've got the advantage of a defensible position and local knowledge." He checked his shotgun. "Plus, Mike's bringing reinforcements." Sam winced as he attempted to shift a heavy cabinet. His torn shoulder had begun bleeding again, the fabric around the wound soaked crimson. "Let me look at that," Ray offered, setting aside his suspicions temporarily. As he cleaned the wound, Ray noticed something odd. The injury wasn't consistent with a snowmobile accident. The tear was too clean, more like a knife wound or a bullet graze. "Strange injury for hitting a rock," Ray commented, applying pressure. Sam's eyes flickered. "Must have caught on something when I went down." It happened fast. Before Ray could press further, Liz gasped from her position by the window. "Someone's coming!" Ray moved quickly to her side, peering through a gap in the boards. A lone figure was approaching on foot, hands raised to show they were empty. Even from a distance, Ray recognized the sheriff's distinctive gait. "It's Mike," he confirmed, relief evident in his voice. "I'll let him in." Ray opened the door cautiously, shotgun still ready. Sheriff Mike Callahan stepped inside, brushing snow from his coat. At 55, Mike was lean and weathered, his badge gleaming against his brown uniform jacket. "Damn, Ray," he greeted, surveying the barricaded cabin. "When you said trouble, you weren't kidding." "Thanks for coming," Ray replied, securing the door behind him. Mike nodded to the others. "These your friends. Elizabeth Cornell," Ray introduced. "And Sam Reeves. Found him with a wrecked snowmobile near Blackwater Pass." Mike's expression remained professional, but Ray caught a flicker of something recognition when Liz's name was mentioned. "Ma'am," he acknowledged with a nod. "And you, sir, that shoulder needs proper medical attention." "What's the situation outside?" Ray asked, drawing Mike aside. "Not good," the sheriff admitted quietly. "Got reports of a helicopter landing near your place last night. Private security types asking questions in town this morning. They've got some kind of federal documentation, not FBI. Something else. They're not federal, Liz interjected, having moved closer to overhear. They work for Maxwell Reed, head of security at Pinnacle Group. Whatever credentials they're showing are fabricated. Mike raised an eyebrow. Pinnacle Group, the investment firm. What did you do? Steal their coffee machine? I discovered they're running a massive fraud operation, Liz replied. Stealing from pension funds, primarily targeting veterans. I have proof. She patted the pocket where the drive was secured. And Reed wants it back, Ray added. Badly enough to send armed men into a blizzard. Mike whistled low. Well, that complicates things. I've got a four-wheel drive Bronco hidden about a quarter-mile back. Can get you to my cabin on Silver Creek. It's remote, secure. You can lie low while I arrange transport to Denver. Ray studied his old friend's face, noting the slight sheen of sweat despite the cabin's chill. You okay, Mike? You seem tense. Just concerned, Mike replied, a bit too quickly. This Reed character sounds dangerous. We should move soon before those men pick up your trail again. As they gathered their gear, Sam approached Ray, voice low. Something's not right, he murmured. The sheriff recognized Ms. Cornell's name. Did you see his reaction? Ray had noticed it too, but wasn't ready to voice his suspicions. Keep it to yourself for now, he instructed, but stay alert. They left the cabin in single file, Mike leading, Ray bringing up the rear. The forest had grown quiet, too quiet, the natural sounds of wildlife conspicuously absent. Every instinct in Ray's body screamed danger, but they had few options. Mike's Bronco was where he promised, concealed under a camouflage tarp beneath a stand of pines. As they approached, Ray noticed fresh tire tracks nearby, multiple sets that hadn't been completely filled by falling snow. Mike, Ray called out, keeping his voice casual. Thought you said you came alone. The sheriff froze momentarily before turning, his expression unreadable. I did. Then why are there multiple tire tracks here? Ray's hand moved subtly toward his shotgun. The tension shattered as Mike suddenly drew his service weapon. Don't, he warned, aiming at Ray. I'm sorry, old friend. I truly am. From the surrounding trees emerged 5 men in tactical gear, rifles trained on Ray, Liz, and Sam. One stepped forward tall, broad-shouldered, with close-cropped silver hair and eyes like chips of ice. His bearing spoke of military precision and absolute authority. Maxwell Reed, I presume? Ray said flatly. The man inclined his head slightly. Mr. Harmon, impressive background you have. NASA's loss was Wyoming's gain, apparently. His gaze shifted to Liz. Miss Cornell, you've led us on quite a chase. How much did they pay you, Mike? Ray asked, not taking his eyes off Reed. The sheriff looked away. Enough to cover my debts. I didn't have a choice. Ray, these people, they knew things. About the gambling. About the money I owe. There's always a choice, Ray replied, disappointment heavy in his voice. Reed stepped forward. Ms. Cornell, the drive, please. I'd prefer to resolve this without bloodshed. So you can continue stealing from veterans? Liz challenged. So you can keep laundering money for your criminal clients? A thin smile curved Reed's lips. Your moral outrage is admirable, but misplaced. Pinnacle serves greater interests than you can comprehend. National security interests. That's what they all say, Ray interjected, right before they bury the truth and anyone brave enough to speak it. Reed's attention shifted to Ray. Stay out of this. Old man, this isn't your fight. It became my fight when armed men invaded my property, Ray countered. And it's been my fight ever since powerful men decided truth was negotiable. Something dangerous flashed in Reed's eyes. I won't ask again. The drive. Ms. Cornell. Liz's hand moved to her pocket, then hesitated. In that moment of tension, Sam suddenly collapsed to his knees, clutching his wounded shoulder and groaning loudly. All eyes turned to him, including, crucially, Mike's. It was the distraction Ray needed. In one fluid motion, he knocked the sheriff's gun aside and drove a fist into his solar plexus. Mike doubled over, gasping. Ray seized the fallen weapon and fired 2 shots into the air, creating momentary confusion. "Run!" he shouted to Liz, already moving toward the tree line. Chaos erupted. Reed's men opened fire, bullets splintering bark and kicking up snow. Ray returned fire, providing cover as Liz sprinted for the trees. Sam, surprisingly agile for someone who had appeared seriously injured moments before, tackled one of Reed's men, wrestling for his rifle. Ray reached the forest edge, pulling Liz behind a massive pine as bullets whizzed past. To his amazement, Sam was holding his own against 2 of Reed's men, fighting with a skill that belied his earlier vulnerability. "Who the hell is he?" Ray muttered. Liz shook her head, equally bewildered. "I have no idea." The firefight intensified. Ray, running low on ammunition, knew they couldn't hold out much longer. "There's a ravine 50 yards east," he told Liz. "Deep enough for cover. When I give the signal, run for it. Don't stop. Don't look back." "What about you?" she demanded. "I'll be right behind you," he promised, knowing it might be a lie. "On 3, 1, 2, 3. Liz bolted, zigzagging between trees as Ray provided covering fire. She disappeared into the underbrush just as his borrowed pistol clicked empty. Ray dropped the useless weapon and prepared to follow, but a searing pain in his leg brought him crashing to the ground. A bullet had grazed his thigh. Not deep, but enough to slow him down. As he struggled to rise, the cold press of a rifle barrel against his neck froze him in place. "Admirable effort," Reed's voice came from behind. "But pointless." Ray closed his eyes, awaiting the bullet that would end his life. Instead, Reed continued, "Tell me where she's going, and you might survive this." "Go to hell," Ray spat. Reed sighed. "Predictable." He gestured to his men. "Find the woman. She's heading east. And someone find out who that third person really is. He's not just some stranded hiker." Ray was hauled roughly to his feet, his wounded leg protesting sharply. Through the trees, he could see Sam still fighting, having somehow acquired one of the tactical team's rifles. The young man moved with practiced efficiency, his earlier injury seemingly forgotten in the heat of battle. "Interesting friend you've made," Reed observed, following Ray's gaze. "Not who he appears to be." Before Ray could respond, a deafening explosion rocked the clearing. Flames erupted from the Bronco, sending Reed's men diving for cover. In the confusion, Sam appeared at Ray's side, shoving Reed away with a powerful strike. "Move," Sam urged, supporting Ray as they retreated into the forest. They stumbled through the trees, Ray's injured leg leaving a trail of blood droplets in the snow. Behind them, Reed was shouting orders, reorganizing his men for pursuit. "Who are you, really?" Ray demanded as they ran. Sam grimaced. "FBI, Special Agent Samuel Bennett. I've been investigating Pinnacle for 8 months. He pulled a badge from an inner pocket. "Was on my way to a meeting with an informant when the storm hit. Then my snowmobile actually did crash." Ray processed this revelation as they pushed deeper into the forest. "You were investigating before Liz took the evidence. Pinnacle's been on our radar for years," Sam confirmed. "But they're careful, compartmentalized, insulated. We could never get enough for a warrant." He paused. "Cornell's evidence could break the case wide open." They reached the ravine Ray had directed Liz toward, but found no sign of her. Sam helped Ray down the steep embankment, both scanning for tracks. "There," Sam pointed to a partial footprint heading northwest. "She's smart, doubling back toward your cabin." "She thinks I'm captured or dead," Ray realized. "Going for the emergency supplies I keep there?" Sam nodded. "Reed will have men watching the cabin. We need to get to her first." As they followed Liz's trail, moving as quickly as Ray's injury permitted, Sam explained more about the Pinnacle investigation. "It's bigger than fraud," he revealed. We believe they're laundering money for foreign intelligence operations. Maybe worse. That's why Reed has so much firepower, he's protecting more than corporate secrets. And Mike, Ray asked, thinking of his former friend. Was he already on Reed's payroll when I called? Probably, Sam admitted. Reed's thorough. He'd have contingencies for every scenario, including you reaching out to local law enforcement. He glanced at Ray. For what it's worth, the sheriff looked genuinely conflicted. Whatever history you two have, it wasn't an easy betrayal for him. Ray's expression hardened. That doesn't make it any less of one. They continued in silence, the forest growing denser as they approached the ridge that would lead back toward Ray's property. The wound in Ray's leg had slowed to a dull throb, but he knew he was leaving a trail that Reed's men could follow. As they crested a small rise, the distinctive crack of a rifle shot echoed through the trees, followed by a woman's scream. Liz! Ray breathed, suddenly finding new strength. They scrambled toward the sound, all attempts at stealth abandoned. They emerged into a small clearing to find Liz pinned down behind a fallen log, exchanging fire with two of Reed's men, who had positioned themselves among the rocks above. Her face was scratched, her coat torn, but she was fighting with remarkable determination. Sam immediately took aim with his captured rifle, dropping one of Reed's men with a clean shot to the shoulder. The other ducked behind cover, giving Ray and Sam a chance to reach Liz's position. Thought you were dead, she gasped when she saw Ray, relief washing over her features. Not yet, Ray replied, though not for lack of trying on Reed's part. Sam quickly explained his true identity, showing Liz his badge. Her initial skepticism gave way to cautious hope. You can get this evidence to the right people. People Reed can't reach. There's a task force, Sam confirmed, carefully vetted, reporting directly to the deputy director. If we can get to Denver, I can make contact. A bullet splintered the log inches from Ray's head, ending their conversation. The remaining gunmen had been reinforced by three more, effectively surrounding their position. We're trapped, Liz observed grimly. Ray studied their surroundings, mind racing through options. His gaze settled on a rocky outcropping 30 yards to their left. Not necessarily, he said. See those boulders? There's a space beneath them, tight squeeze, but it connects to an old bear den that runs deep into the hillside. How do you know that? Sam asked incredulously. Tracked a wounded mountain lion there once, Ray replied. Had to crawl in after it. Not my smartest moment. Another volley of gunfire peppered their position. We'll need a distraction, Sam noted, checking his ammunition. I've got maybe 5 rounds left. Ray reached into his pack, producing a small tin container. Magnesium flares, he explained. For emergencies, they burn hot enough to melt snow down to bare ground. Understanding dawned on Sam's face. If we light the underbrush on the opposite side, fire will draw their attention, Ray confirmed. Might even make them fall back to avoid being trapped themselves. Liz looked skeptical. You're talking about starting a forest fire. Controlled, Ray assured her. This time of year, with this much snow, it won't spread far, just enough to create confusion. It was a desperate plan, but they had few alternatives. Sam provided covering fire while Ray prepared the flares. On his signal, Liz hurled the first flare into a patch of dry undergrowth on the far side of the clearing. It ignited instantly, flames leaping hungrily from branch to branch. Reed's men reacted predictably, focusing their attention on the sudden threat. Ray, Liz, and Sam used the distraction to make a dash for the rocky outcropping. Ray led them to a narrow gap between 2 massive boulders, barely visible unless you knew exactly where to look. In here, he directed, dropping to his hands and knees. It's tight at first, but widens after about 10 feet. One by one, they squeezed into the gap, Ray going last despite Liz's protests about his injured leg. They crawled through near darkness, the passage damp and smelling of earth and animal musk. True to Ray's word, it eventually widened enough for them to crouch, then finally stand in a cavern roughly 8 feet high. There's a passage that continues north, Ray explained, illuminating their surroundings with a small flashlight. Follow it for about a quarter mile, and it opens into a ravine that leads toward my property. There's an old storage shed there with emergency supplies, including an ATV I keep fueled for situations like this. Sam looked impressed. You really did think of everything. When you've lived as long as I have, you learn to prepare for the worst, Ray replied. Sometimes it even happens. They followed the underground passage, moving as quietly as possible. Occasional sounds from above suggested Reed's men were searching for them, but the narrow entrance to the cave system wasn't easily discoverable. After 20 minutes of careful progress, they reached the exit Ray had described, a narrow fissure that opened into a steep, rocky ravine. The sun was beginning its descent, shadows lengthening across the snow-covered landscape. Reed will have men watching my cabin, Ray cautioned as they emerged. The shed is about 300 yards east, just beyond that copse of aspens. We'll need to approach carefully. Sam nodded. I'll take point. You two follow when I signal it's clear. Despite Ray's protests, Sam moved ahead, utilizing cover with professional skill. Ray and Liz waited anxiously, watching as the FBI agent disappeared among the trees. Minutes stretched endlessly until finally Sam's signal. 3 short flashes from his flashlight indicated the path was clear. They moved quickly to join him, finding Sam crouched behind a fallen tree with a clear view of the storage shed. As Ray had predicted, 2 of Reed's men patrolled nearby, rifles at the ready. We need a diversion, Liz whispered. Ray considered their options. The shed has a back entrance maintenance hatch for the generator. If one of us could create a distraction, the others could reach it. Sam volunteered immediately. I'll circle around, draw them off. Give me 5 minutes, then make your move. Before they could argue, he slipped away, moving silently through the deepening shadows. True to his word. 5 minutes later, a series of loud crashes erupted from the direction of Ray's cabin, followed by shouts of alarm. The guards immediately rushed toward the commotion, leaving the shed momentarily unguarded. Now, Ray urged, leading Liz in a crouched run toward the structure. The maintenance hatch was exactly where Ray remembered, partially hidden by overgrown brush, its hinges protesting softly as he pulled it open. They crawled inside, finding themselves in a space filled with tools, camping equipment, and various survival gear. In the center sat a rugged ATV, covered by a tarp but ready for use. We'll wait for Sam, Ray decided, peering through a small window. If he doesn't return in 10 minutes, we'll have to assume he's been captured or worse. Liz nodded grimly, checking the thumb drive that contained the evidence. All of this people risking their lives, getting hurt for some digital files. Not just files, Ray corrected. Truth. Justice for the people Pinnacle stole from. Some things are worth the risk. The minutes ticked by in tense silence. Just as Ray was beginning to fear the worst, the hatch creaked open and Sam squeezed through, breathing hard but uninjured. They're searching the cabin, he reported. Found some old traps in the woods and set them off. Won't keep them distracted long, though. Ray pulled the tarp from the ATV. This can carry all 3 of us. There's a logging road that connects to County Route 7 about 8 miles south. From there, we can reach Clearwater and find transportation to Denver. As Ray prepared the vehicle, checking fuel and controls, Sam kept watch at the window. Movement near the tree line, he warned. They're spreading out, conducting a systematic search. Time to go, Ray declared, starting the ATV's engine. The sound, though muffled by the shed's walls, seemed deafening in the tense silence. Liz looked alarmed. They'll hear us the moment we leave. Counting on it, Ray replied with grim determination. When I open that door, don't stop for anything. Hold on tight and keep your heads down. With a nod to Sam, who positioned himself by the main door, Ray gunned the engine. Sam flung the door wide, and Ray drove the ATV straight out into the fading daylight. Shouts of alarm erupted immediately, followed by the crack of rifle fire. Ray swerved hard, zigzagging between trees as bullets kicked up snow around them. Liz clung to his waist, while Sam, riding behind, returned fire with his limited ammunition. The ATV bounced over rough terrain, its powerful engine roaring as Ray pushed it to its limits. They crashed through underbrush, ducked beneath low-hanging branches, and splashed through shallow streams. Behind them, engines revved as Reed's men gave chase, but the ATV's maneuverability in the dense forest gave them a crucial advantage. "Road ahead!" Sam shouted over the engine's roar. Sure enough, the dirt track of the logging road appeared through the trees. Ray turned onto it, opening the throttle fully. The ATV leaped forward, tires finding better traction on the packed surface. For several minutes, they sped along in relative safety, the sounds of pursuit fading behind them. Then, rounding a bend, Ray cursed and slammed on the brakes. Ahead, blocking the road, were two black SUVs positioned nose to tail. Armed men crouched behind them, weapons trained on the approaching ATV. "Roadblock," Ray growled, quickly assessing their options. The forest on either side was too dense for the ATV to navigate at speed. Going back meant facing their pursuers. They were trapped. Maxwell Reed stepped from behind one of the vehicles, an almost regretful expression on his face. "End of the line," he called. "You've led us on an impressive chase, but it's over now." Ray felt Liz tense behind him. "Don't give them the drive," he murmured. "Whatever happens." Reed approached, flanked by two guards. "Ms. Cornell, the evidence, please. Then you and your friends can leave a bit worse for wear, perhaps, but alive." "You expect us to believe that," Sam challenged. Reed's cold gaze shifted to him. "Agent Bennett, yes, we know who you are. Your investigation has been quite thorough, if ultimately futile." He smiled thinly. "And to answer your question, no, I don't expect you to believe me, but the alternative is considerably less pleasant for everyone involved." Liz slid from the ATV, standing tall despite her exhaustion. "People deserve to know what Pinnacle has done. The veterans you stole from, the families affected, they deserve justice." "Justice," Reed echoed, as if testing an unfamiliar word. "A noble concept, but an impractical one in this instance. The ramifications of exposing Pinnacle's operations extend far beyond a few mismanaged pension funds. We're talking about national security, international relations, financial stability for millions." "Convenient excuses," Ray interjected, joining Liz. "I've heard them before. Greater good arguments from men who wouldn't recognize good if it slapped them in the face." Reed's expression hardened. "You understand nothing, old man. The world isn't the simple place you imagine from your mountain hideaway. Sometimes, sacrifices must be made. Uncomfortable choices, necessary evils." "Spare us the philosophy lesson," Sam said, positioning himself protectively beside Liz. "Your necessary evils include fraud, money laundering, and attempted murder. That's not national security, that's organized crime with better suits." A tense standoff ensued, neither side willing to back down. Ray noticed Sam subtly scanning their surroundings, likely looking for any tactical advantage. There was none to be found. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and out of options. The running from the road behind Reed's blockade, headlights appeared. A vehicle approached, not the sleek SUVs Reed's team used, but an older model pickup truck, its engine rumbling loudly. Reed's men shifted nervously, some turning their weapons toward this new arrival. The truck stopped, and from it emerged an elderly couple. The man, tall and white-haired, but still carrying himself with military bearing despite his advanced years, approached with his hands raised placatingly. "Evening, folks," he called out. "Having some trouble on the road?" Reed signaled his men to hold their fire but keep alert. "This is a private matter, sir. I suggest you and your wife return to your vehicle and find another route." The old man squinted, taking in the scene: the armed men, the blocked road, the three disheveled figures by the ATV. "Doesn't look private to me," he observed. "Looks like three against many, which doesn't seem sporting." Ray tensed, concerned these innocent bystanders would be caught in the crossfire. "Sir, you should listen to him. This situation is dangerous. The elderly man smiled faintly. Danger's a relative term. Son, with surprising speed, he reached into his coat and withdrew a badge. Walter Davis, FBI, retired. This is my wife, Eleanor, also retired bureau. Reed's expression darkened. You're making a mistake, old-timer. This is beyond your jurisdiction. Funny thing about jurisdiction, Walter replied, his friendly demeanor unchanged though his eyes had hardened. When you witness armed men threatening people on public land, it has a way of becoming everybody's business. Eleanor had emerged from the truck as well, and Ray noticed with astonishment that she held a shotgun with the comfortable familiarity of someone well-versed in its use. Maxwell Reed, Sam called out, recognition dawning. Meet Walter Davis, the man who wrote the FBI's tactical response protocols in the 80s. And Eleanor Davis, former head of the Bureau's Financial Crimes Division. Walter nodded appreciatively. You've done your homework, young man. The balance of power had shifted, however slightly. Reed's men looked uncertain, glancing to their leader for direction. Reed himself seemed to be recalculating his options, eyes flicking between Walter, Eleanor, and the thumb drive still securely in Liz's possession. What's your play here, Davis? Reed asked finally. You and the missus planning to take on my entire team romantic, but suicidal? Walter chuckled. Oh, we're not alone. He raised a hand, and suddenly the forest around them came alive with movement. Figures emerged from the trees, men and women in tactical gear, weapons raised. Called in some favors from old colleagues. Turns out a lot of retired agents don't take kindly to someone stealing veterans' pensions. Reed's face contorted with rage. This isn't over, he spat, backing toward his vehicle. Pinnacle has resources you can't imagine. Connections that reach to the highest levels. Good, Liz replied, stepping forward with newfound confidence. Because I have names, dates, account numbers, everything needed to expose not just the fraud, but everyone involved in it. She held up the thumb drive. And now, it seems, I have people who can make sure it reaches the right hands. Reed gave a curt nod to his men, who began retreating to their vehicles. You've won this round, Miss Cornell, but Pinnacle plays a long game. Remember that. As Reed's convoy departed, the tension gradually eased. Walter approached, extending his hand to Ray. Walter Davis, seems like you folks have had quite a day. Ray Harmon, he replied, shaking the offered hand. And you have no idea. Eleanor joined them, shotgun now lowered, but still ready. We should move quickly, she advised. Reed isn't the type to admit defeat easily. He'll regroup, call in reinforcements. How did you find us? Sam asked, still somewhat stunned by their timely arrival. Walter smiled. Been tracking Pinnacle for years, ever since they took over managing the Bureau's retirement fund. Started noticing discrepancies in quarterly reports. When Eleanor and I heard whispers about an FBI agent investigating off-book, we decided to monitor the situation. He glanced at his wife. We were heading to a meeting with our contact when we came across your situation. Your contact being me, Sam realized. I was supposed to meet a retired agent with information. Walter nodded. Small world, isn't it now? I suggest we continue this conversation somewhere more secure. Our cabin is about 30 miles from here off-grid, defensible, and equipped with a satellite uplink that can get your evidence to the right people. As they transferred to Walter and Eleanor's vehicles, the elderly couple had brought a second car. Driven by another retired agent, Ray found himself marveling at the strange turns life could take. 24 hours ago, he had been alone in his cabin, nursing old wounds and bitter memories. Now he was part of something meaningful again, a fight for truth against powerful interests who would bury it. Liz approached as he was securing his gear. Thank you, she said simply, for everything. Most people would have turned me away at their door. Ray shook his head. Most people haven't seen what happens when good people stay silent. He glanced at the thumb drive she still clutched tightly. That evidence, it won't just expose Pinnacle. It'll vindicate you. Maybe it'll vindicate both of us, she suggested. The truth has a way of coming to light eventually. As they drove away from the scene of the standoff, following Walter and Eleanor's truck deeper into the mountains, Ray felt something he hadn't experienced in decades: hope. Not the fragile hope of youthful optimism, but the tempered, resilient hope of someone who had seen the worst of humanity and still found reason to believe in its better nature. The road ahead would be dangerous. Maxwell Reed and Pinnacle Group would not surrender easily, but for the first time in 25 years, Ray Harmon was no longer running from the past. He was facing the future, whatever it might bring, with purpose and conviction. And as the sun set behind the Wyoming mountains, painting the snow-covered landscape in hues of gold and amber, Ray realized that sometimes the most unexpected paths, even a desperate traveler asking to use a phone during a blizzard, could lead to redemption. The Davis cabin stood as a testament to Walter and Eleanor's shared paranoia or foresight, depending on one's perspective. Nestled against a granite cliff face that shielded it from the north winds, the structure appeared modest from the outside, a two-story log home with a wraparound porch and smoke curling from a riverstone chimney. What wasn't immediately apparent were the reinforced walls, bulletproof windows, and state-of-the-art security system that rivaled many FBI field offices. "Welcome to the fortress," Walter announced as they pulled into the cleared driveway. "Not the retirement most people imagine, but it suits us." Eleanor ushered them inside while Walter and the other retired agent, a taciturn man introduced only as Hector, secured the vehicles in a reinforced garage built into the hillside. The interior of the cabin belied its rustic exterior, equipped with modern furnishings and technology that seemed out of place against the log walls. "Communication center is in the basement," Eleanor explained, leading them through the main living area. "Kitchen's stocked, bedrooms upstairs. Bathroom down the hall has a first aid kit, looks like you could all use it." Ray's wounded leg had begun throbbing again, the adrenaline that had masked the pain now fading. Liz's shoulder injury had worsened during their flight, and Sam sported various cuts and bruises from his encounters with Reed's men. They made a battered, exhausted group. "Get cleaned up," Eleanor suggested. "I'll fix something to eat. We can debrief over dinner." An hour later, wounds treated and clothes changed into borrowed items from the Davises' surprisingly extensive wardrobe, they gathered around a large oak dining table. Walter had prepared a hearty beef stew, the rich aroma filling the cabin with an unexpected sense of normalcy after the day's chaos. "First things first," Walter began, passing bread around the table. "That evidence needs securing. Reed will have people monitoring all conventional communications channels." Liz placed the thumb drive on the table. "Everything's encrypted: financial records, transaction logs, audio recordings of board meetings where the scheme was discussed. There's enough here to bring down not just Pinnacle, but several high-ranking government officials who facilitated the fraud." "Which explains Reed's determination," Eleanor noted. "This isn't just about money, it's about power and influence at the highest levels." Sam nodded, wincing slightly as the movement aggravated a bruised rib. "My investigation hit roadblocks at every turn. Warrants denied, witnesses suddenly recanting, evidence mysteriously corrupted. Someone's been protecting Pinnacle from inside the Bureau." "The question is who we can trust," Ray interjected. "If Pinnacle has compromised FBI leadership, where does this evidence go?" Walter exchanged a meaningful glance with Eleanor before responding. "There's only one person I'd stake my life on: Catherine Reynolds, Deputy Director of the FBI. She recruited me, mentored Eleanor, and has the integrity of a saint with the spine of a drill sergeant." "Reynolds," Sam confirmed. "She's the one who authorized my investigation. Off the books. Kept it compartmentalized. Minimal paper trail." "Then that's our play," Walter decided. "Catherine maintains a secure communication protocol for extreme circumstances, a relic from our Cold War days that never made it into the official channels. I can reach her that way. Arrange a meeting." "Meeting?" Liz questioned. "Wouldn't it be safer to just send the evidence electronically?" Eleanor shook her head. Too risky. Digital transmissions leave traces, no matter how secure. And given what we've seen of Reed's resources, we have to assume they're monitoring all conventional methods. A physical handoff, Ray concluded. In person? Exactly, Walter confirmed. Catherine has a safe house in Denver, an apartment officially owned by a shell corporation with no ties to the Bureau. We deliver the evidence there, directly to her. Denver's a 6-hour drive in good conditions, Sam pointed out. With the storm aftermath and Reed's people searching, it could take longer, which is why we leave at first light, Walter replied. 2 vehicles, different routes. Reed knows you 3 are together, so we split up. Confuse the pursuit. Ray nodded slowly, the tactical logic appealing to his engineer's mind. I'll go with Liz. She's the primary target, and I know the backcountry roads better than most. I'll take Sam with me and Eleanor, Walter decided. We'll take the main highway more exposed, but faster. Hector will remain here to coordinate and serve as backup if either group runs into trouble. The plan was sound, if dangerous. They spent the next hour mapping routes, establishing communication protocols, and preparing for various contingencies. By the time they finished, exhaustion had settled deeply into Ray's bones. The events of the past 24 hours, from the moment Liz knocked on his cabin door to their narrow escape from Reed's ambush, seemed surreal, like fragments of someone else's life. As the others prepared for bed, Ray stepped onto the porch, needing a moment alone. The night air was crisp and clear, stars glittering overhead with a brilliance only found far from city lights. He leaned against the railing, weight off his injured leg, and let the silence wash over him. The door opened behind him, and Eleanor emerged, carrying 2 steaming mugs. Thought you might need this, she said, offering one to Ray. It's bourbon with a splash of coffee, rather than the other way around. Ray accepted gratefully. Been a while since I've had such an eventful day, Eleanor chuckled. Retirement not quite what you expected. Never really thought of it as retirement, Ray admitted. More like exile. Ah, she nodded knowingly. The Artemis disaster. I wondered if you were that Ray Harmon. At his surprised look, she added, I was with the Bureau's public corruption unit back then. There were whispers about the investigation being steered. Ray's grip tightened on the mug. Steered is one way to put it. Manipulated is another. Some cases stay with you, Eleanor observed. The ones where justice doesn't quite reach. She sipped her drink. Walter and I had a few of those. Part of why we never fully retired. Hard to walk away when you know the job isn't finished. Ray considered her words. For 25 years, I told myself there was nothing I could have done differently, that the system was too big, too entrenched. I wonder now if that was just an excuse. Maybe, Eleanor allowed. Or maybe you needed those 25 years to heal, to prepare for this moment. She gestured toward the cabin where Liz slept. That woman in there, she's fighting the same battle you did. Different circumstances, same war. Perhaps this is your second chance. The thought lingered as Ray finished his drink. A second chance, not to rewrite the past, but to ensure a different outcome this time. To stand against the powerful interests that would sacrifice truth for convenience and lives for profit. Get some rest, Eleanor advised, taking his empty mug. Tomorrow won't be easy. Ray nodded, gazing once more at the star-filled sky before following her inside. Whatever tomorrow brought, he would face it with clear purpose, something he hadn't felt in decades. Dawn arrived with muted golden light filtering through frost-covered windows. The cabin stirred to life as Walter prepared a hearty breakfast, while Eleanor and Hector loaded supplies into the vehicles. By the time Ray descended the stairs, the smell of coffee and bacon had filled the main room. Morning, Walter greeted, sliding a plate toward him. Eat up. Might be your last proper meal for a while. Ray accepted the food gratefully, noting Sam and Liz already at the table, reviewing maps and finalizing their separate routes to Denver. Both looked better after a night's rest, though the tension in their postures revealed the gravity of the day ahead. "Any updates?" Ray asked. "Joining them?" Sam nodded grimly. "Hector made some calls. Reed's people have set up checkpoints on all major roads leading south. They're using some kind of homeland security pretext looking for fugitives, allegedly involved in domestic terrorism. They're getting desperate," Liz observed. "Going this public means they're worried about what happens if we reach Denver. It also means they're calling in serious favors," Walter added, joining the conversation. "That kind of roadblock operation requires coordination with local authorities. Official paperwork. Reed's reach extends further than we anticipated." Ray studied the map, tracing the route he and Liz would take. "We'll avoid the checkpoints altogether. There's an old mining road that crosses the state line near Blackwater Ridge. Not on most maps, barely maintained, but passable with the right vehicle." "Which we have," Eleanor confirmed, entering from outside. "Just finished prepping the Jeep extra fuel, emergency supplies, satellite phone. Our route's more direct but riskier," Walter explained, indicating the highway. "We'll use bureau credentials to clear any checkpoints. They might be fake fugitive alerts, but legitimate FBI identification should still carry weight." "And if it doesn't?" Liz asked, voicing the concern on everyone's mind. Walter's expression hardened. "Then we'll know exactly how compromised the local agencies are and adjust accordingly." The underlying message was clear. They were prepared to force their way through if necessary, a prospect that added another layer of danger to an already perilous journey. They finished breakfast in focused silence, each mentally preparing for the challenges ahead. As they gathered their gear, Ray pulled Liz aside. "Last chance to reconsider," he said quietly. "The backcountry route won't be easy. Rough terrain, isolated, minimal support if something goes wrong." Liz met his gaze steadily. "I trust you, Ray, and after everything you've risked for me already, I wouldn't want anyone else watching my back." Her confidence was both reassuring and sobering. Ray had spent decades alone in the mountains, responsible only for himself. Now, someone else's life and the chance to expose a massive conspiracy rested partly in his hands. Outside, final preparations were underway. The vehicles had been positioned for a quick departure. Walter's heavy-duty SUV facing the main drive. Ray's borrowed Jeep angled toward a less obvious trail that wound behind the cabin. "Communication protocol is set," Hector reminded them, distributing encrypted two-way radios. "Check-ins every 2 hours using the predetermined codes. Any deviation or missed check-in, we assume compromise and activate contingency plans." Walter approached Ray, extending his hand. "Good luck out there. Harmon, trust your instincts, they've kept you alive this long." Ray shook the offered hand, recognizing in Walter a kindred spirit, another man who had seen the darker side of power and chosen to stand against it, regardless of the cost. "Same to you," Ray replied. "See you in Denver." The two groups parted ways, engines rumbling to life as they set off in opposite directions. Ray guided the Jeep along the narrow trail behind the cabin, Liz beside him in the passenger seat, her eyes constantly scanning their surroundings. "How's your leg?" she asked as they navigated the rough terrain. "Functional," Ray replied, downplaying the persistent throb. Eleanor had rebandaged it that morning, commenting on his luck that the bullet had only grazed muscle without hitting bone or major vessels. "Should hold up." They drove in companionable silence for the first hour, gradually ascending into higher elevation as the trail became increasingly primitive. Snowdrifts occasionally blocked portions of the path, forcing Ray to engage the Jeep's four-wheel drive system to power through. The vehicle performed admirably, clawing over obstacles that would have stopped lesser machines. As they crested a ridge overlooking a vast expanse of wilderness, Liz finally spoke again. "Did you ever imagine you'd be doing something like this when you left NASA?" Ray allowed himself a brief, humorless laugh. "Can't say smuggling corporate whistleblowers through the backcountry was part of my retirement plan. No." "Do you regret it, walking away instead of fighting?" The question struck a nerve Ray thought long calloused over. Every day, he admitted after a long pause. Not the walking away part that was necessary for survival, but the silence afterward, letting them control the narrative. He navigated around a fallen tree blocking part of the trail. 7 families never got the real story about why their loved ones died. That's the part I regret. Liz nodded, understanding in her eyes. When I first discovered what Pinnacle was doing, I considered just resigning quietly, taking another job, pretending I hadn't seen the evidence. It would have been easier. What changed your mind? I met some of the veterans whose funds were being siphoned, she replied, her voice softening. Men and women who had served their country, now living on fixed incomes, counting every dollar. Some had medical needs they couldn't afford, choosing between medication and food. Her jaw tightened. Pinnacle's executives were buying vacation homes with money stolen from people who couldn't fight back. I couldn't walk away from that. Ray understood perfectly. The same moral imperative that had driven him to warn about the Artemis flaw had compelled Liz to expose Pinnacle's crimes. The difference was that she had refused to be silenced. Their conversation was interrupted by the crackle of the radio. "Checkmate to Bishop, routine status check," came Hector's voice, using the predetermined code names. "Bishop to Checkmate, proceeding as planned." Ray responded, "Currently at the first waypoint. No complications. Roger that." "Night reports yellow at Checkpoint Alpha." Ray and Liz exchanged concerned glances. Yellow meant Walter's group had encountered resistance at their first checkpoint, but managed to proceed. "Acknowledged," Ray replied. "Maintaining course. Bishop out." As they continued their journey, the trail descended into a narrow valley, shadows from the surrounding mountains creating patches of ice that required careful navigation. Ray's decades in these mountains served them well. He anticipated hazards before they became problems, choosing lines through difficult terrain that maximized traction and minimized risk. By mid-afternoon, they had covered nearly half the distance to the state line, though the most challenging section still lay ahead. They paused in a sheltered ravine to rest and refuel, both the Jeep and themselves. "How much further to this mining road?" Liz asked, consulting their map. "About 2 hours, assuming no complications," Ray replied, checking the Jeep's tires for damage. "It follows an old silver mining route from the 1890s. Narrow in places, steep grades, but it crosses into Colorado away from any official checkpoints." Liz nodded, her gaze distant. "And once we're in Colorado, another 4 hours to Denver, give or take. We'll skirt the major highways, stick to county roads." Ray straightened, wincing slightly as his injured leg protested. "With luck, we'll reach the rendezvous point by nightfall." "If Walter's group makes it," Liz added, voicing the concern they both shared. The radio crackled again before Ray could respond. "Checkmate to all pieces. Urgent update. Night reports red at Checkpoint Bravo. Diversion protocols active." Ray's expression darkened. Red meant Walter's group had encountered serious resistance, possibly armed confrontation. Diversion protocols indicated they were implementing evasive maneuvers, possibly going off their planned route. "Bishop acknowledges," Ray responded, "continuing as planned unless instructed otherwise." He turned to Liz, whose face had paled. "We keep moving," he said firmly. "Walter and Eleanor know what they're doing. Sam, too. Our job is to get you and that evidence to Denver, regardless of what happens." She nodded, resolve returning to her features. "Let's go." They resumed their journey with renewed urgency, Ray pushing the Jeep's capabilities to the limit where terrain allowed. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across their path, temperature dropping as elevation increased. According to their map, the mining road's entrance lay just beyond a granite outcropping that local hunters called Eagle's Perch. As they rounded a bend approaching the landmark, Ray suddenly slammed on the brakes, throwing an arm across Liz to brace her against the sudden stop. "What is it?" she asked, alarmed. Ray pointed silently ahead. The trail before them showed clear signs of recent passage, broken branches, disturbed snow, And most concerning, fresh tire tracks unlike those of recreational vehicles. "Someone's been here," he murmured, studying the evidence. "Heavy vehicles, military or tactical grade from the tread pattern. Within the last few hours," Liz's hand moved instinctively to the pocket containing the thumb drive. "Reed's men. How could they know about this route?" "They might not know specifically," Ray reasoned, "but they'd have guessed we'd avoid main roads. They're likely covering all possible alternatives." He considered their options. "We can't turn back, it would cost too much time. And we can't abandon the vehicle in this terrain. So we proceed," Liz concluded. "But carefully," Ray nodded grimly. "Very carefully." They continued at a reduced speed, senses heightened for any sign of ambush. Ray extinguished the Jeep's headlights despite the gathering dusk, relying on his familiarity with the terrain to navigate safely. The radio remained ominously silent, no further updates from Hector regarding Walter's group. As they approached Eagle's Perch, Ray guided the Jeep off the main trail into a dense copse of pines. "We'll reconnoiter on foot," he decided. "The mining road entrance should be visible from that ridgeline." Liz nodded, zipping her coat against the biting cold. They moved stealthily through the trees, Ray favoring his injured leg but maintaining a steady pace. The forest was unnaturally quiet, no bird calls. No small animals rustling in the underbrush. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. They reached the ridgeline and dropped to a prone position, using a fallen log for cover. Below, the entrance to the mining road was clearly visible, as were the two black SUVs blocking it. 4 armed men patrolled the area, their movements suggesting professional military training. "Ambush," Ray whispered. "They're waiting for us." "How did they know?" Liz's voice was barely audible. Ray's mind raced through possibilities. "Maybe they didn't. They're probably covering all potential crossing points." He surveyed the surrounding terrain. "There's another way, but it's risky. Old game trail about half a mile east that crosses a ravine, barely wide enough for the Jeep, and the bridge, if you can call it, that hasn't been maintained in decades." "Sounds delightful," Liz replied with grim humor. "Lead the way." They retreated carefully, keeping low until they reached the Jeep. Ray started the engine, keeping the lights off as he maneuvered through the trees toward the alternative route. The game trail was exactly as he remembered, narrow, overgrown, and following a precipitous line along the edge of a deep ravine. Local hunters use this to access the high country during elk season, Ray explained as they inched forward. County stopped maintaining it after 3 vehicles went over the edge in the 90s. "That's reassuring," Liz muttered, gripping the dashboard as the Jeep tilted alarmingly toward the drop-off. The bridge, when they reached it, inspired even less confidence, a weathered wooden structure spanning a 60-foot gorge, its surface partially rotted and covered with snow that concealed potential weak points. Ray stopped the Jeep, assessing their options. "I need to check it first. The Jeep's heavy if that wood is as degraded as it looks. We could go straight through." Before Liz could protest, he was out of the vehicle, moving carefully onto the bridge. Each step was deliberate, testing for stability, occasionally using a knife to probe beneath the snow for rotted sections. The structure groaned under his weight, swaying slightly in the mountain breeze. After what seemed an eternity, he returned. "It'll hold barely, but we need to cross precisely where I've cleared the snow. Any deviation could be catastrophic." Liz nodded, tension evident in her posture. "You're sure there's no other way?" "Not unless you want to backtrack 50 miles and risk running into more of Reed's men," Ray replied, climbing back into the driver's seat. He engaged the lowest gear and began the crossing, moving at a crawl. The bridge protested beneath them, wood creaking ominously with each foot of progress. Halfway across, a particularly loud crack made them both flinch. "We're okay," Ray assured her, though his white-knuckled grip on the steering wheel suggested otherwise. "Just a little further." The Jeep's front tires reached solid ground on the far side, prompting a sigh of relief from Liz. Then, just as the rear wheels were leaving the bridge, a section collapsed behind them with a splintering crash. The Jeep lurched backward, rear tires spinning momentarily over empty space before Ray gunned the engine, propelling them forward to safety. They sat in stunned silence for a moment, adrenaline coursing through their systems, before Liz let out a shaky laugh. Well, at least no one can follow us that way. Ray managed a tight smile. Small mercies. He checked his watch. We're behind schedule. If we push hard, we might still make the rendezvous by midnight. The radio crackled suddenly. Checkmate to Bishop. Emergency protocol. Night is compromised. Repeat. Night is compromised. Adjust rendezvous to secondary location. Ray's expression hardened. Bishop acknowledges. Moving to secondary rendezvous. He turned to Liz. Walter's group has been captured or otherwise compromised. We need to change plans. What's the secondary location? Liz asked, fear evident in her voice. An old warehouse in Denver's industrial district. Eleanor chose it. Apparently it was a bureau staging area years ago, before budget cuts closed it. Ray accelerated as the trail widened, allowing faster travel. It's more exposed than the apartment, but has multiple exit routes and was deemed defensible in a worst-case scenario. And if Reed's people are waiting there too? Liz voiced the question they were both considering. Ray's jaw set determinedly. Then we improvise. They crossed into Colorado as night fell completely, the Jeep's headlights now illuminating their path as they joined more established roads. Ray maintained vigilant awareness, watching for any signs of pursuit or checkpoints. Twice they detoured around small towns where police presence seemed unusually heavy. The radio remained silent despite their attempts to contact Hector for updates. Either communication had been compromised, or the situation at the cabin had deteriorated. Neither option boded well. We're on our own, Ray concluded after their third unanswered call. From here to Denver, we trust no one. Liz nodded, fatigue evident in her features, but determination undiminished. We've come this far. We'll finish it. Denver's lights appeared on the horizon shortly after 11 p.m., a glowing dome against the night sky. Ray navigated the outskirts, avoiding main thoroughfares in favor of industrial access roads that saw minimal traffic. The warehouse district appeared deserted at this hour, rows of corrugated metal buildings with darkened windows and locked gates. That's it. Ray indicated a nondescript structure set back from the road. Loading bay entrance on the east side. According to Eleanor's instructions, they approached cautiously, driving past once to scout for any signs of surveillance or ambush. Seeing none, Ray circled back and pulled alongside a delivery entrance partially concealed by stacked shipping containers. Wait here, he instructed, retrieving his shotgun from the back seat. I'll check it out. Liz touched his arm. Be careful. Ray nodded, then slipped from the Jeep into the shadows. He moved with practiced stealth despite his injured leg, years of hunting having taught him how to minimize sound and utilize available cover. The warehouse door was secured with a padlock that yielded to the bolt cutters from their emergency kit. Inside, the space was cavernous and dark, illuminated only by faint moonlight filtering through high windows. Rows of abandoned shelving created a maze-like interior, perfect for concealment but equally suitable for ambush. Ray swept his flashlight in a careful arc, searching for any sign of Walter's group or potential threats. Finding neither, he returned to the Jeep. Looks clear, but we should remain vigilant. I'll bring the vehicle inside, then secure the entrance. Once the Jeep was parked within the warehouse and the door re-secured with a chain they'd brought, Ray and Liz established a defensible position among the shelving, with crates providing cover on three sides and clear sight lines to all major entrances. They settled in to wait. How long do we give them? Liz asked, checking her watch. It was nearly midnight. Dawn, Ray decided. If no contact by then, we proceed to the FBI field office directly. It's riskier, but at that point, our options will be limited. They took turns keeping watch, though neither could truly rest given the circumstances. Ray used the downtime to clean and check their weapons, while Liz reviewed the evidence on her laptop, ensuring everything was organized for quick transfer when the time came. Around 2 a.m., a soft metallic click from the far side of the warehouse brought them both to immediate alertness. Ray motioned for Liz to stay down while he crept forward to investigate. Shotgun at the ready. The sound came again, someone attempting to open a side entrance without making noise. Ray positioned himself behind a concrete pillar, watching as the door eased open slowly. A figure slipped inside, followed by two more. In the dim light, it was impossible to identify them. Ray remained motionless, controlling his breathing as the intruders moved deeper into the warehouse. Their movements suggested tactical training, methodical, covering each other, checking corners. But was it Walter's group or Reed's men? The answer came when one whispered, "Clear this section, then sweep east. They're here somewhere." Reed's team. Ray retreated silently to their position, signaling Liz with a prearranged gesture indicating danger. Her eyes widened, but she remained composed, gathering the laptop and thumb drive. "3 hostiles," Ray whispered. "Maybe more outside. We need to move." They slipped from their hiding place, using the shelving for cover as they worked their way toward the loading bay where the Jeep was parked. Progress was agonizingly slow, each step carefully placed to avoid creating noise that would give away their position. They had almost reached the vehicle when a shout echoed through the warehouse. "Contact rear entrance." 2 subjects moving toward the loading bay. So much for stealth. Ray pushed Liz toward the Jeep. "Get in. Be ready to move." Gunfire erupted, bullets pinging off metal shelving around them. Ray returned fire, the shotgun's blast momentarily illuminating the space in stark relief. Someone cried out in pain, but more shots followed. Liz reached the Jeep, scrambling into the driver's seat as Ray had instructed earlier in case he was injured. Ray provided covering fire as he backed toward the vehicle, maintaining suppressive fire to keep Reed's men pinned down. A bullet found its mark, tearing through Ray's left arm. He grunted in pain but kept moving, finally reaching the Jeep and climbing into the passenger seat. "Go loading bay door." Liz gunned the engine, the Jeep lurching forward toward the massive rolling door that sealed the loading dock. It was designed to be operated electronically, but with power long disconnected, it presented a formidable barrier. "Ram it!" Ray shouted, firing out the window at pursuing figures. Liz accelerated, the Jeep's heavy front bumper striking the door with enough force to buckle the metal. A second impact bent it further, creating a gap at the bottom. The third hit broke it free from its tracks, crashing outward with a deafening clang. They burst into the night, tires squealing as Liz navigated the loading area and aimed for the street. Behind them, Reed's men emerged from the warehouse, still firing. The rear window shattered, showering them with glass. "Head for the FBI office," Ray directed, grimacing as he applied pressure to his wounded arm. "No more alternative plans. We go straight to Reynolds now." Liz nodded grimly, maneuvering through the deserted industrial streets with surprising skill. "What about Walter and the others? If they're captured, our best chance of helping them is completing the mission." Ray replied, "Get that evidence to Reynolds. Expose Pinnacle. Bring the full weight of uncorrupted federal agencies down on Reed." With a Denver FBI field office occupied a modern building downtown, its facade of glass and steel designed to project transparency and authority. At nearly 3 a.m., it was illuminated but clearly operating with minimal staff, perfect for their purposes, as it reduced the number of potentially compromised personnel they might encounter. Liz parked the battered Jeep in the visitor's lot, helping Ray out as blood continued seeping through his makeshift bandage. "You need medical attention," she insisted. "After," he replied firmly. "First, we find Reynolds or someone who can contact her directly." They approached the main entrance, aware of the security cameras tracking their movement. A night guard met them at the door, hand resting cautiously on his sidearm. "Buildings closed to the public," he stated flatly. "Official business hours begin at 8 a.m. Ray straightened to his full height despite the pain. "We need to see Deputy Director Reynolds immediately." "It's a matter of national security." The guard's expression remained impassive. "Deputy Director Reynolds isn't stationed at this field office. If you have information to report, I can connect you with the duty agent. Listen carefully, Liz interjected, her professional demeanor asserting itself. My name is Elizabeth Cornell. I have evidence of massive financial fraud and potential espionage involving Pinnacle Group. Deputy Director Reynolds is expecting this information. People have died to protect it. Something in her tone, or perhaps Ray's bloodied appearance, gave the guard pause. Wait here, he instructed, retreating to his desk to make a call. Minutes later, two agents in suits emerged from an elevator, approaching with cautious professionalism. The older of the two, a woman with steel gray hair and piercing eyes, addressed them directly. I'm Special Agent Diane Morrison, Night Supervisor. This is Agent Kendrick. I understand you have information regarding an ongoing investigation. Ray and Liz exchanged glances, uncertain whether to trust these unfamiliar agents. Before they could decide, the main doors burst open behind them. Four figures entered: Walter, Eleanor, Sam, and to Ray's astonishment, an elegant woman in her 60s whose bearing radiated authority. Stand down, Morrison, the woman commanded. These people are with me. Agent Morrison straightened immediately. Deputy Director Reynolds, we weren't informed you were in Denver. That was intentional, Catherine Reynolds replied. Her gaze shifted to Ray and Liz. Mr. Harmon, Ms. Cornell, I'm glad you made it. She noted Ray's injury with concern. Medical attention is waiting upstairs, along with a secure room where we can review your evidence. Relief washed over Liz's features. Walter and Eleanor, we thought you were captured. Walter grinned, though Ray noted a fresh bruise along his jawline. Almost were. Had to leave the SUV behind when Reed's people boxed us in at a checkpoint. Catherine extracted us personally after we reached an FBI safe house. And Reed? Ray asked, pressing his wound as fresh blood seeped through. Reynolds' expression hardened. Currently being detained by agents I personally vetted. His team has been scattered, but they remain dangerous. She gestured toward the elevator. We should continue this conversation upstairs. The fewer people who know you're here, the better. As they rode the elevator to a secure floor, Ray felt the adrenaline that had sustained him beginning to ebb, replaced by a bone-deep weariness and throbbing pain. Yet alongside the physical discomfort was something unexpected, a sense of completion, of having seen an important task through to its end. In a conference room converted to a medical station, a bureau doctor treated Ray's wound, while Liz transferred the evidence to Reynolds' secure systems. Walter and Eleanor provided additional context, filling in details about Pinnacle's operations that their years of informal investigation had uncovered. The scale is even larger than we anticipated, Reynolds noted as she reviewed the files. Foreign intelligence services using Pinnacle to launder funds, government contracts manipulated, pension funds systematically plundered. She looked up, her expression grim but determined. This will require a task force of unprecedented scope. Many powerful people will fight to bury it. They already have, Sam pointed out. Reed's operation wasn't just corporate security gone rogue. He had support from within multiple agencies. Reynolds nodded. Which is why this stays completely compartmentalized until we're ready to move. I have a team of prosecutors standing by people I trust implicitly. Within 48 hours, we'll execute simultaneous warrants across the country. Ray, arm now properly bandaged, rejoined the group. What about the people Reed's already targeted, the veterans whose funds were stolen? Restitution will be part of any prosecution, Reynolds assured him. But more importantly, we'll prevent further theft. Your actions today have protected thousands more from becoming victims. As the discussion continued, Ray found himself drifting slightly. The combination of exhaustion, pain medication, and emotional release making it difficult to focus. He excused himself, stepping into the hallway for a moment of quiet reflection. Liz followed, concern evident in her expression. You should be resting, she admonished gently. Been resting for 25 years, Ray replied with a tired smile. Figured I could spare a few more hours to finish what we started. She studied his face. When this is over, when Pinnacle is exposed and Reed is behind bars, what will you do? Go back to your cabin. The question gave Ray pause. He had lived in isolation for so long that the prospect of anything else seemed foreign. Yet these past days had awakened something long dormant, a sense of purpose, of connection to something larger than himself. I don't know, he admitted finally. That life seems incomplete now, like I've been hiding rather than healing. Liz nodded understanding. Whatever you decide, you've made a difference. Those 7 families from the Artemis disaster, they may never know how you tried to protect their loved ones, but thousands of others will benefit from what you helped accomplish today. Ray considered her words, finding unexpected comfort in them. Perhaps redemption didn't require public vindication or official acknowledgement. Perhaps it was enough to know that, when given a second chance, he had chosen courage over comfort, action over apathy. Ms. Cornell, Mr. Harmon, Reynolds called, emerging from the conference room. We're ready to begin formal statements. The Attorney General has been briefed and is authorizing emergency procedures to secure all Pinnacle assets before the markets open. As they returned to the room, Ray caught Walter's eye. The older FBI veteran gave him a subtle nod of respect, one fighter recognizing another. In that moment, Ray understood that his exile had ended. Whether he returned to his cabin or found a new path forward, he would no longer be defined by what had been taken from him, but by what he had chosen to give. The simple act of letting a desperate traveler use his phone during a blizzard had set in motion events that would bring down a criminal enterprise, restore stolen funds to veterans, and perhaps, most surprisingly, offer an aging engineer a chance to make peace with his past. Some might call it coincidence. Ray Harmon called it justice delayed, but not denied. The Wyoming mountains stand unchanged, indifferent to the battles fought across their rugged terrain. Snow continues to fall, covering the evidence of gunfire, the tracks of desperate flight, the blood spilled in pursuit of truth. Nature forgives what men cannot forget. Ray Harmon returned to his cabin one last time, not to hide, but to remember why he once believed in standing up for what's right. The silence that had been his refuge for 25 years now felt less like peace and more like unfinished business. Liz Cornell testified before Congress, her evidence exposing corruption that reached the highest levels of power. Veterans reclaimed what was stolen. Families found justice. Systems began the slow work of repair. Some wounds never fully heal. The 7 families who lost loved ones in the Artemis disaster may never know Ray tried to save them. Maxwell Reed's employers found new shadows to hide within. Mike Callahan still wears his sheriff's badge, the weight of his betrayal visible only in his eyes. But sometimes, redemption isn't about erasing the past. It's about finding the courage to face the future. Sometimes, the most powerful act isn't bringing down an empire, but opening a door during a blizzard when a stranger knocks. In the space between justice and mercy, between vengeance and forgiveness, this is where we find our humanity. Where would you stand when that moment arrives?